Hey everyone, how we doing today? This is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit, and welcome back to another video. And as part of the Ask SplitSuit a Question series, a bunch of people asked hand history questions. This one comes via Sasha, and Sasha prefaces the hand by saying, "Hi James, I have an interesting hand here from the Sunday Millions. We're in the money with about 400 players remaining that I thought you might like to review and or use for your videos. Loving them all, by the way." So Sasha, I'm glad to hear you're enjoying the videos. Hopefully you're enjoying this one as well. And for those of you that don't play on PokerStars, the Sunday Million is a 215 buy-in with a 1 million guarantee. And this was sent to me via the Boom Replayer. This is the first time I've used the Boom Replayer in one of these videos. So if you guys have opinions on whether you like it or really hate it, just let me know and I'll keep that in mind going forward. But anyway, in this hand, we started with roughly 35 big blinds. It folds around. Sorry, it's a little slow. Come on. There we go. And we face a min raise from player 5, and player 5 is a 35-31 over 33 hands, not a huge sample size, and he'd been playing pretty aggressively. So not too shocking given those stats, very small gap in the VPIP PFR, so definitely something to keep in mind going forward, plan for aggression. And in this situation, Hero decides to call, and I'm not going to complain too much about that. The one thing I will say is at least consider going for a 3-bet. Now, if you said, okay, well, I'm just going to flat here because obviously I have a great price plus position, and I fear that if I 3-bet, I'm going to get 4-bet a lot of the time, that's really valid. Just keep that in mind. Sometimes against these kind of aggressive players, I would much rather 3-bet a couple of times and really say, hey, dude, you're not going to get my blinds for cheap. Knock it off. Because remember, this dude, yes, he has the small blind versus big blind here, but he's also going to have the button when you are in the small blind, and that's something that I want to avoid, him just constantly stealing my blinds. That's something I want to send a message very quickly about, especially in tournaments. But anyway, we decide to flat, and onwards we go. End up catching middle pair, check, and Hero decides to check as well. Now, in this situation, I would very heavily consider just betting here. If player 5 is just giving up with something like 6-7, that's fine. If they're just giving up with 8-9 or pocket 4s or whatever it is, that's fine. Because remember, I'm going to be stabbing here with things that don't connect with this board as well, and I want to be applying pressure. And if he wants to go into some weird check call down mode with ace-x, fine. That's his prerogative. I'm not going to be too worried about it. So in this situation, I would much rather see a bet from Hero rather than this passive check, because what's going to happen is you're going to face a bet on the turn, most likely, and then you're going to face a bet on the river, and then you have to see if you can find some sort of call down with second pair, right? And is that something that you really want to do when you could just as easily just stab the flop? Maybe he'll probably relinquish some semblance of equity. That's fine. And then we just go forward to the next hand, right? I don't really want to check here. I would much rather just stab this, get it out for something like 14 or even 12, get the job done, and go forward from there. All right, so after the flop goes check, the 8 on the turn, face a bet from player 5. Obviously, we decide to call. Again, this is very commonplace after the flop goes check. This is kind of exactly what I expected to happen. But again, like, think about this on the flop, right? You face a bet on the turn, you face another bet on the river. What's your plan? Is that really going to be the best plan? Right? Because you know you're going to face the turn bet a large chunk of the time. Once that goes check, he thinks you have nothing, so he's going to stab a lot of the time. This is pretty common. And on the river, we end up improving to a 7. Player 5 decides to check. Hero decides to bet for 10. And size-wise, this is really small. Now, in Sasha's write-up, they consider going for like a check on the river, fearing that they're behind for some odd reason. And maybe you're behind, but I don't think you're behind anywhere near enough at the time to consider checking this back. I mean, you really want to try to get this person to find some sort of like hero call with king jack or ace 4 or something like that. And part of the issue here is you bet 10. Right, which just doesn't scream any sort of strength. It looks like you're trying to get some sort of like finished kind of value. I'm not sure why we're in a thin value mindset with our current hand on the current board, the way the hand's played out, but I digress. So I'd really like to see this bet for something like half pot, something like 25. Like, you would never bluff here for 10. So would you bluff for 25? Maybe. So I'd really like to see something like 25, something that could be a bluff, something that's not just like, oh, it looks like one pair that hates life, because then you're going to induce things like this, and then you have no idea what to do. Now, if the entire plan all the way along was to induce, try to get this kind of thing to happen, and it happened because you bet 10, then by all means, snap it off, feel good about it. But that plan was not given to me in the write-up, which means I don't think that was the case. I don't think this was purposeful. There are times, there are players to induce like this against, but you always have to have that very concrete plan before you do it. It's not just some like random reactive thing. So in this situation, Hero does decide to find the call, and I mean, I'm not going to blame you too much. It's a really weird line for player 5 to take with like a monster hand, but again, you kind of induced this. Like, had you bet something like 25 on the river and face the check raise, I think you're going to be much less inclined to try to find some call. And again, had you just bet the flop, you don't have to worry about any of this because the hand never plays out like this in that situation. So I think you kind of set yourself up for this, partially with the flop call, partially without probably considering a 3-bet pre-flop, partially because you only bet 10 into 50 on the river. You put yourself into this weird situation. I know that it kind of sucks. It sucks when it's like, oh crap, I created this scenario. And unfortunately in poker that happens a lot of the time. And this, I think, is one of those times. So unfortunately, he ended up turning a set, and good for him. Congratulations. Again, had we decided to bet the flop and 8s goes away, I'm okay with that. Again, I'm never going to complain too much about picking up a free pot. So at least consider going for the flop stab in the future. As played, I think, again, you just kind of walked yourself into a tornado here just by making a couple of suboptimal decisions. But I think in the future, you're going to play this spot much better, and you're not going to have as much of a problem here. So Sasha, thanks for the great hand, and if you or anyone else has a poker-related hand or question, feel free to leave it on our Google Plus page. Leave a link for that in the description box, and also please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this type of video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, good luck out there, and happy grinding.